Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Cochran Doctrine with me, Eric Cochran. Please like and subscribe to my channel down below. Sorry that I've been gone for over a month since my last upload, as I said at the conclusion of my last vlog, to be continued. There would be a part 3. I have of course started getting into the subjects of race and crime and police brutality in my last couple of vlogs, but before I continue, I would like to go ahead and brush on something. Since my last 2 uploads, I've had a social media tussle. While I may not have a lot of subscribers yet, the fact is I enjoy making these videos and I'm going to continue to make them, even if it's just to develop a skill for right now. Obviously, I'm getting across to some people because in my last social media tussle, somebody referred to my videos as awkward and hoping that I would get bored with them. Well, good. All I'm going to say is nobody can deny the actual numbers that the media tries so hard to hide these days. So, now that we've brushed on race and violent crime and police brutality, let's start off the third part of this vlog with the central question. Do children need fathers?
But if we're honest with ourselves, we'll admit that too many fathers are also missing. Too many fathers are MIA. Too many fathers are AWOL.
And the biggest problem facing the black community, Tavis, is not racism. The biggest problem is children having children, and that is a product of the welfare state.
Number 1, father absence. Number 2, the education system and the illiteracy rate. Illegal immigration ranks high, abortion ranks high, white supremacy and white nationalism, if I had to make a list again of 100 things, would not be on it.
Only up until the last few generations, this would be deemed an absurd question to ask. But out-of-wedlock birth rates and father abandonment have increased at alarming levels, leading for this having to be explained. In one particular community, the very same community which is so disproportionately involved in violent crime and incarceration rates, it has seemingly become a societal and cultural norm. Out-of-wedlock births and baby mamas, single moms, and father abandonment.
You and I know this is true everywhere, but nowhere is it more true than in the African American community. We know that more than half of all black children live in single-parent households. Half. A number that's doubled since we were children.
Oh, by the way, my name is Ashtray.
My name is Dashiki. That's Swahili for doggy style.
Ooh, that's pretty.
Those are my kids.
Hello, everybody.
Now, children, what do you say when you meet a nice man?
Are you my daddy?
Children who grow up without fathers are 5 times more likely to be impoverished, 9 times more likely never to earn so little as a high school diploma, and 20 times more likely to end up incarcerated. Does that sound familiar? Who said that?
We know the statistics that children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime. They're 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 20 times more likely to end up in prison. They're more likely to have behavioral problems or run away from home or become teen parents because the father wasn't in the home. The foundations of our community and our country are weaker because of this.
That was, of course, a speech that he gave on Father's Day 2008, 5 months before being elected president. During his run for president in 2008 and in the 8 years that followed, Barack Obama made it crystal clear that fathers are every bit as important to the foundation of families as mothers are. He was critical of how half of all black children today are raised by single moms, and that has indeed correlated to widespread troubled youth and incarceration. Let's ask a few basic questions. If fathers weren't needed to raise children, then why are they needed to conceive? Why can't, if a woman just wants to have a baby, can she not just have one spontaneously? Maybe times have changed in the last few generations, with women becoming a significantly larger part of the workforce, especially in white-collar areas. But still, does common sense suggest that a woman/mother is not capable of being a full-time employee, of working full-time, financially supporting herself, and at the same time being a full-time parent, providing all of the financial support that a child needs, along with all the structure, the discipline, the love, and the nourishment? At the same time, can a father with multiple children and baby mamas scattered throughout be a full-time father to them all? I would say that common sense should suggest no, and the records speak for themselves. As a man who grew up without a father, and furthermore worked as a community organizer in a major American city, Chicago, Barack Obama has certainly said families matter in reducing crime and poverty, and has lived by example, being the father that he never had to his 2 daughters.
There's no more important ingredient for success. Nothing that would be more important for us reducing violence than strong, stable families. Which means we should do more to promote marriage and encourage fatherhood. You know, don't get me wrong, as the son of a single mom who gave everything she had to raise me with the help of my grandparents, you know, I turned out okay. But at the same time, I wish I had had a father who was around and involved.
While I never voted for him, I commend him for what he has said about the importance of families and his sharp criticism of his own community regarding its decline more than any other in America. So, what happens when you take fathers out of households? Well, a good 15 years before Barack Obama became a household name, the name Tupac Shakur was, especially within the African American community. For those of you who don't know, his father walked out on him and his mom when he was 5. He never saw or heard from his father again until he was 23, in the last 2 years of his life, before he was gunned down that fateful night in Las Vegas. Despite his fame and fortune, at the rate he was going, people joked that Tupac would not live to be 25 years old. Well, they were wrong, but only off by 3 months. I know for a fact that had I had a father, I'd have some discipline, I'd have more confidence. Your mother cannot calm you down the way a man can. Your mother cannot reassure you the way a man can. You need a man to teach you how to be a man. Mothers love and mothers care. Dads provide security and dads provide discipline. As Tupac noted, boys need their father's discipline and security in that order, and girls need their father's security and discipline in that order. Boys, by nature, have no built-in moral compass. Boys need a mature father to look up to teach them how to be a mature man. Being wrong, being punished, and learning from it is part of growing up, and it is best to learn it at home, with authority set by your father within the household.
Do you think we've made any headway in the
I think it's more important to make headway in our own house. By the time the system comes into play, the damage is done. They're not locking up 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
And boys, without a doubt, are more inclined to obey their fathers and fear their wrath more so than their mothers. Boys get more and more difficult to control as they get older, especially starting in adolescence. This is when both boys and girls decide what path they are going to go down and seeing what they can and can't get away with. 2 parents, a father especially, are needed to keep them in check. The year before I went to military school, 7th grade, the only year I was at public school, I remember 3 boys in my grade who didn't have fathers at home. Whether they might have been born to a teen mom and never known him, or had parents who had bitterly divorced and dad was out of the picture, their lack of academic motivation and respect for authority at school was clearly reflective. Might I add that this was at a school that was predominantly white, as in over 90%, which these 3 boys were. I can only imagine how chaotic inner city schools are when they have a dropout rate as high as 50% in many cases. We know that 85% of violent criminals, a disproportionately high number of whom are black, grew up in fatherless homes. The same goes for nearly all juveniles. They almost always come from fatherless homes. Many violent criminals, especially in urban settings, were youth who ran away from home and joined street gangs. Street gangs give young men who don't have fathers a source of status, protection, and income, i.e. the security a father typically provides. Clearly, many of these mothers, as hard as they may have tried, could not keep their sons on the right path without a father around. Moving on to girls and why they need fathers. While little girls may not have the same wild nature as boys, they clearly take to a certain nature early on, which is realizing their feminine roles, and that is to someday be wives and mothers. I think it is ever so apparent in that little girls like playing with dolls and like the traditional fairy tale stories where a man and a woman live happily ever after. What little girl doesn't like the Disney princess films like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, The Little Mermaid? I think you get the idea. As I said, girls need a father's security first and foremost, and that is to teach them discipline when it comes to her body. Daddy serves as the first and foremost man any little girl has to look up to, trust, and of course, receive and reciprocate love from. He will, or his lack thereof, will set the standard for all future men she will become involved with. Historically, there is one long-term goal a father has for his daughter, and it is for her to find a man who will love and cherish her as much as he does, who will be there for her long after he is gone, i.e., a suitable husband. Without a man to ingrain in her what unconditional love is, in her day-to-day life growing up, and in the most ideal of circumstances, where he is married to her mother, and their loving marriage serves as a guideline, girls have no built-in understanding of how men should treat them. And for that matter, many of them don't have any discipline when it comes to choosing who they sleep with. Taking all of that into account, it should come as no surprise that girls who grew up without fathers are far more likely to be sexually active teenagers, and teen mothers for that matter. They are more likely to drift from one man to another, oftentimes with babies stacking up, and feeling forced to stay in abusive relationships with the type of men who grow up without fathers themselves. Any woman finds drifting from one sexual relationship to another, especially while struggling to raise children, every bit as emotionally unfulfilling as it is depressing. Matters made even more complicated if fathers for her children are not around. And then the toxic cycle starts all over. To give credence to everything I'm saying above, all you have to do is look at abortion demographics. They are as highly skewed towards the black population in this country as violent crime is. Regardless of how you feel about the abortion issue, I think this much can be universally agreed upon. The world is a better place each year the fewer and fewer women who have to make this decision. In nearly 50 years since Roe v. Wade, nearly half of all legal 62 million abortions that have been performed on black women. Black women have abortions at 5 times the rate of any other women in this country, racially speaking. The most dangerous place for a black child is in the womb. In recent years, more black women in New York City are aborting pregnancies than giving birth. It is no mere coincidence that 70% of all Planned Parenthood facilities are located in urban settings with higher than average minority populations and lower than average incomes. It's the basic laws of supply and demand. That is where the most unwanted pregnancies happen, and the need to terminate them is the highest. Oh, and by the way, isn't that systemic racism? By placing these facilities in these neighborhoods, are we encouraging women here to have abortions? Plato said 24 centuries ago, "Nobody is more hated than he who speaks the truth." And more recently, Ben Shapiro has said, "Facts don't care about your feelings." I'm sorry that the truth hurts, and the truth is sometimes offensive for many of you left-wingers out there, but it's the truth. Allow me to go on with, for those of you who don't know, Jesse Jackson was born in Greenville, South Carolina in 1941. His mother was 16 at the time and impregnated by a married neighbor twice her age. In other words, he was the result of an adulterous affair, which by today's standards constituted statutory rape. When he was a year old, his mother married her new husband, happily adopting and raising Jesse as his own son. But nevertheless, Jesse, growing up, was the laughingstock of his peers all around the neighborhood and at school, branded the bastard child whose daddy at home wasn't his real daddy. There was a time in this country, no matter what race you were, even in the Jim Crow South, that being born out of wedlock was a shameful status to have. It was also every bit as humiliating for your parents and your parents' parents that their son and daughter had done such a thing. But unlike so many black children today, Jesse at least had a relationship with his father growing up. On the contrary, Al Sharpton was born over a decade later in 1954, not in the Jim Crow South, but in New York City, where he was raised, his parents married and financially stable starting off in the beginning. But his childhood took a turn for the worst when he was 8 years old, and his father started being unfaithful and eventually left his mother for another woman, leaving her to raise the kids all by herself, and forcing her in to the government housing projects where she had to live off government assistance and work as a maid supporting her kids thereafter. So, here are two men whom the mostly left-wing black community looks up to with such high regard, who know firsthand the many hardships that come with being born and raised by a teen mom and or having your father abandon you and the family. And yet, neither of these men I hear very often condemning this toxic cycle of teen pregnancy and father abandonment, at least not nearly to the extent that they push their race-hustling rhetoric. Now, at the same time, please do not interpret everything I have said in this video to discredit that there have been people raised by single moms, starting in very humble, even impoverished beginnings, who have gone on to graduate from top academic institutions in this country and be leading figures of their generation. People like Barack Obama and Dr. Ben Carson. At the same time, there have been some boys who have been raised in privileged houses with all the love two parents could give them and have shown the world they are horrible human beings within the last 10 to 12 years. They have had every opportunity to succeed handed to them. Maybe they've even been blessed with athletic talent and competed on top intercollegiate sports teams at some of our nation's top universities. They chose to throw it all away, committing absolutely hideous crimes against women, and they all happen to be white. Just to name three of them: George Hughley, Brock Turner, and most recently, Brandon Thiesfeld. Of course, there are always exceptions to any situation, but at the end of the day, fathers matter. Thanks for watching. I'm Eric Cochran. Until next time.